Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're have another episode of JJ Reacts to True News. Um, Basically, I'm gonna be watching the True News episode for today. Um, on the episode, I don't really know what to expect. I come in watching, and I just give my thoughts on on what they're talking about. For the most part, I agree with most of the stuff they're talking about. I've been listening to True News, gosh, for years now. I can't even remember the number of years I've been watching the show, but they helped me a lot with a bunch of the research I've been doing. I look into a lot of the things that they've been saying. But before we get started, hit that like button, share this out so we can get this information out there. Also, subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and hit that alarm bell so you know when I go live like this. And also click my link in the description, my link tree. That has a link to my Patreon page where I talk about things that I can't talk about here. Also, check out my merch store where I have Let's Go Brandon t-shirts, I Will Not Comply t-shirts, all types of t-shirts. So check those out. Each purchase go help fund what we're doing here. All right, let's watch True News. All right. Oh, also caveat: if they start talking about the stupid 19, since we're on YouTube, you know I'll have to fast forward to any of that if they start talking about that. Hate to do it, but you know how it is. All right, let's go ahead and start this.
This is True News, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help us God. I'm Rick Wiles. The possibility of nuclear war in coming weeks is appearing in numerous newspaper articles and in TV news discussions. The odd thing is, few people seem to care. Well, what explains the public's lack of alarm about mass destruction? Doc Burkhart and I will talk about it today on this edition of True News. And so we'll start our conversation with news articles about nuclear war. Because, Doc, we don't have to look for them anymore.
No, they're just commonplace. We're used to it. Like you said, it's like a normalcy bias that we're having right now. So this is from Al Jazeera. This is Dmitry Peskov saying,
I don't know what's going on with my computer here. Sorry about that.
Nuclear war.
Concept of domestic security that outlines when nuclear weapons can be used. So basically, Russia is saying Russia could use nuclear weapons if existence was threatened. And obviously, they're saying that because they have some sort of feeling that their existence could be threatened.
Yes. So, Mr. Peskov is the...
I'm going to be checking the, my YouTube from my phone from time to time to make sure we're streaming, because one time I got cut off and I didn't even know it. So if you see me with my head down, either that or I'm smoking a vape if you see me with my head down. So, all right.
Press secretary for Vladimir Putin. He's the Jin Saki of Moscow.
Right.
Okay? So he's being asked questions in press conferences about the use of nuclear weapons. This is the point we're making today, is that nuclear war has now become a common topic in press conferences, on television news programs, in the speeches by U.S. senators and by Russian senators. They're just talking openly about the use of nuclear weapons.
So Dmitry Peskov made those remarks when he was speaking to CNN's Christiane Armageddon. And the Kremlin spokesperson said in an interview that Russia would only use nuclear weapons if its very existence were threatened. Peskov's comment came as CNN interviewer Christiane Armageddon pushed him on whether he was convinced or confident that Vladimir Putin would not use the nuclear option in the Ukrainian context. We have a concept of domestic security, and it's public. You can read all the reasons for nuclear arms to be used, Peskov said on Tuesday. So if it is an existential threat for our country, then it can be used in accordance with our concept. So in other words, if he felt like the existence of Russia would be threatened, where Russia would cease to exist, then yes, they would use the nuclear option. I mean, he confirms that.
Yes.
Now,
I have no doubt that Russia would use the nuclear weapons if need be. I mean, I don't think that's even in question here. That's what makes me so upset about the whole warmongering stuff that's going on right now, particularly with Americans, because they act like Russia can't do anything to us. It makes absolutely no sense. They act like it's not going to be. Act like if we go in and do something, we're not going to be held accountable for it. It's not going to be any type of actions through Russia. This is not like a third world country that we're dealing with here. You seen what happened to when the Taliban took over the air base in Afghanistan. You know, Russia has nukes. Russia has real weapons that can harm us, and people are going around talking all this stuff. Like that's what angers me about this whole discussion here.
they have publicly said this. They've put this out there, so it's no secret. But they're making sure that the West is hearing what he's having to say right now.
Yes. Doc, up until the last week or two, politicians and even military leaders and diplomats just never discussed nuclear war.
Right.
It was a topic that was
We settled this question. We're not going to blow each other up.
inappropriate to talk about. Dangerous. It was dangerous to talk about nuclear war. Those were words that should not come out of the mouths of any responsible leader. In the past 2 weeks, and particularly this week, it's in the news every day. And the public, most of the public doesn't even know about it.
Right. Yes.
Most of the public doesn't even know, and of the people who do know about it, few of them care.
Very, very apathetic. People are very, very apathetic about this whole thing. I mean, they do say, like, we need to do something about, we need to help the Ukrainians and blah, blah, blah. But as far as, like, real, like, nuclear war, the whole discussion thing, like, they are apathetic about the whole thing. Hey, what's going on, Copper Skies? Copper Skies says, good evening, and yes, I think all the attempt to crash the Russian economy and seizing of bank accounts like they did with truckers in Canada, but to a whole country of regular citizens. Exactly right. I totally agree with that.
It's just kind of the next topic. There's no.
That's weird. My audio just went down a little bit for a second. That was weird. Copper Sky say, if I didn't know better, I think the population control people want nuclear war. I totally agree. I think that's exactly what they want. They're gonna hide down in their bunkers or something, or I think. I mean, it's hard for them to come back above ground from like a nuclear war. So maybe I could see them really wanting like an EMP or something just to like knock out the power, and then they'll come out from their bunkers once everyone else is dead. And I don't know. It's weird. I really don't know their motives behind all of this, because nuclear war in the end, it really will hurt everyone. So I really don't know why they're pushing it so much. That's what enrages me about the whole thing.
Brought this up in conversations with people, and it just goes right over their head. They changed the channel on me. Don't want to talk about it.
Right, and you're right. To many people, it's just a show on TV. It's something far off, something that happened a long time ago. They can't even comprehend it in their minds, or they have a normalcy bias that says, "I just can't comprehend it."
Or it could happen, but it won't happen on the street I live on.
Right. Now, one of the things that would cross the line for Russia would be the presence of NATO troops, NATO planes, NATO pilots showing up in Ukraine. Well, Foreign Minister Lavrov said that the introduction of NATO peacekeepers to Ukraine would lead to a direct clash with the Russian Federation. Sending NATO peacekeepers to Ukraine would lead to a direct clash between the forces of the alliance and the armed forces of the Russian Federation, This was stated on Wednesday by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov speaking at MGIMO. That's their national state diplomacy university. Our Polish colleagues have already stated there will be a NATO summit now. We need to send peacekeepers. I hope they understand what is at stake. This will be a very direct clash between the Russian and NATO armed forces, which everyone not only wanted to avoid, but said which should never have taken place in principle, he said. And so the Polish have suggested sending in NATO peacekeepers, which would be a direct, that would be a red line for the Russians. There'd be no question.
Well, first of all, they're not going to be peacekeepers.
Right.
They're not going in to, restore law and order in a country that's had riots. They're entering a war zone.
Right.
And there's going to be a clash. And the moment Russian soldiers open fire on NATO soldiers, World War III is on. And we're back to the nukes.
Right.
Because that shooting's only going to last for a few hours, Doc, and we're going to be into nukes. It won't take long. You're not going to hear about a shooting war between Russia and NATO for weeks and weeks and months. It's just going to go to nukes.
Well, and Jens Stoltenberg, the future president of the Federal Bank of Norway there, said that Putin needs to stop these nuclear saber-rattling comments after the Kremlin spokesperson wouldn't rule out using nukes. Well, NATO won't rule out using nukes, so isn't that saber-rattling too? So on Wednesday, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg urged Russia to stop nuclear rattling amid its ongoing war against Ukraine. Russia must stop its nuclear saber-rattling. This is dangerous and it's irresponsible, Stoltenberg said during a press conference in Brussels on Wednesday. He added, "We convey a very clear message to Russia that nuclear war cannot be won and it could never be fought." And yet NATO is moving nuclear weapons around all the time, including in the past week. So how is Russia to respond to those moves?
Jens Stoltenberg is very much responsible for this crisis that we have. He's played a very important role in driving Russia into this military operation in Ukraine. If we wanted peace and reconciliation between the nations, then Jens Stoltenberg would not have pushed Ukraine to be so defiant.
Stoltenberg, that name sounds so familiar. I heard it somewhere. I'm going to have to go and research who that is. That name, it rings a bell. I heard it somewhere, but I can't remember where. And
NATO would not be in placing weapons on the Russian border and troops and bases and tanks. And
Copper Sky said, what does Joe Biden expect to accomplish in Europe? I heard even more bank accounts cut off to members of Russian parliament, but I don't know. Yeah, I mean they're just cutting these people off. What are you gonna all you're gonna do is antagonize these people and make them do something. I think they're trying to force their hand. They want Russia to do something to the West. They want Russia to do something to the West so they can have an excuse to go in. So that's why they're cutting off the bank accounts. They got rid of the SWIFT and all that other stuff, shutting down all the social media stuff and all of that stuff, because they want the uprising in Russia, and they want to push them and push Putin to do something, so they have the West have an excuse to go in and send the NATO troops in.
And conducting drills. What did he think was going to happen? He knows what was going to happen. What's happening right now?
Right.
They're getting the very thing that they wanted.
This
and
is
it
exactly
appears
what they
that
wanted.
the next thing that they want is a nuclear confrontation. NATO has, let's just say, not NATO, Western leaders.
I'm gonna quote Gerald Celente, who I love, and he actually be on this show a lot. Gerald Celente, he says when people lose everything, they absolutely lose it. Meaning when people lose everything, they uprise and they go to war, they fight, and that's exactly what they're trying to do to Russia. They keep poking the bear, they keep poking the bear, pun intended. and they want the bear to attack, so they have a reason to send the NATO troops in.
Western leaders, like people in the CFR, have openly talked.
Copper Sky say exactly. Punishing Germany after World War One really worked well. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
For the past decade or so, Doc, that the U.S. could easily win a nuclear war with Russia.
Yep.
They actually believe it. They have discussions. They have seminars about it. They write articles about it in CFR Foreign Policy magazine.
Well, the thing is, though, you don't get a do-over in a nuclear war. You don't get to go and say, oh, we messed that one up, let's try it again.
Yeah, 2 out of 3.
I mean, that's just not happening. But there are people that actually believe it's winnable. It's winnable for them, but it's not winnable for the populations of the countries impacted by it. The Pentagon ramped up things a little bit today in their briefing by making it very clear, or sending out the message, that there would be a strong response from the U.S. and its allies if Russia dared to try nuclear, biological, or chemical warfare. So watch this.
Just separately, Jake Sullivan said to us yesterday that one of the aims of the visit was to come up with, I'm not directly quoting him, but essentially a unified response between America and the West as to what you might do if nuclear, chemical, biological weapons were used. Can we assume that that would be a red line beyond which we would see some form of direct military response?
You can assume, as the president has said, that any use of chemical weapons would elicit a strong response from the United States and our partners and allies.
What does that mean, though?
What I remember, he said chemical weapons, not just nuclear. He said chemical weapons, and we all know what happened in Syria. Come to find out, I did a video when that gas leak happened. When that gas, they said nuclear weapons were used in Syria, and it came out to be false. It was fake. The whole thing was staged, and I did a video on it and all that, and it came out to be true that the whole chemical thing that happened in Syria was fake. It was a lie. They did that to try to have an excuse to go in, the reason to go in there, go into Syria. I think they're going to do the same thing in Russia, where they want to have a fake chemical, they want to have a chemical attack and blame it on Russia, so they have a reason to go in and send the NATO troops in. So this is important. She asked specifically about nuclear, and he said chemical. Let me rewind it. Did she say nuclear or chemical? Let me rewind it. All right, rewind it a little more. Here we go. See if she said nuclear, chemical, or both.
If Russia dared,
they actually believe it. They have discussions. They have seminars about it. They write articles about it in CFR Foreign Policy magazine.
Well, the thing is, though, you don't get a do-over in a nuclear war. You don't get to go and say, oh, we messed that one up, let's try it again.
Yeah, 2 out of 3.
I mean, that's just not happening. But there are people that actually believe it's winnable. It's winnable for them, but it's not winnable for the populations of the countries impacted by it. The Pentagon ramped up things a little bit today in their briefing by making it very clear, or sending out the message, that there would be a strong response from the U.S. and its allies if Russia dared to try nuclear, biological, or chemical warfare. So watch this.
Just separately, Jake Sullivan said to us yesterday that one of the aims of the visit was to come up with, I'm not directly quoting him, but essentially a unified response between America and the West as to what you might do if nuclear, chemical, biological weapons were used.
All of them.
Can we assume that that would be a red line beyond which we would see some form of direct military response?
You can assume, as the president has said, that any use of chemical weapons would elicit a strong response from the United States and our partners and allies.
What does that mean, though?
Again, you can assume precisely what the president has said, that it would be a strong response from our partners and allies. We've tried to be very clear about the gravity of the use of any such chemical weapons. These are agents that should never be employed, and certainly not on the battlefield as we are concerned Russia might. So we've wanted to be very clear together with our allies and partners, and you can imagine that the president will be discussing this with his partners in Brussels in the coming days, that there would be a strong response from the international community were this to come to pass.
I mean, why are they assuming chemical weapons? I mean, why do they assume this? All of a sudden, why do they assume chemical weapons? Why does that even join the discussion? Is my question, because is Russia known to go to war with countries and employing chemical weapons? I mean, why is this even being talked about right now? That's my question. Because it's like, what is the motive behind this? Is the question that I'm asking.
Whether that be military or not.
Military response?
We will leave it as a strong response. Thank you very much.
That was a staged question and a planned response.
That was my point. That's my point. That's my point right there. What's the motive behind that question? Like, why would someone bring that up? Like, why? It doesn't organically come up in question. You know, it has to be a reason to ask that question about chemical weapons. That's my whole point. I think something is coming, and they warming you up to it. And they did the same thing in Syria. They used the same exact playbook. And if you read one book, you know how the story is gonna go, because they did the same thing in Syria. They started talking about chemical weapons. Like, well, what? Nobody brought anything up. Nobody said anything about chemical weapons. Why are you bringing this up all of a sudden? And then in Syria, it was a chemical attack in Syria all of a sudden. You know, this is crazy. This is the setup. This is the setup here.
Planned answer. He had that answer ready for the question.
Yes.
I know he had the answer ready for the question, because he was stumbling on something, and I saw him look down like he was looking at a piece of paper at a note or something. So I know this was pre-planned. If I wasn't afraid my computer was going to mess up or something, I would rewind it, because I saw him look down at a piece of paper like he was looking for the word. I can't remember what word it was. I think he said agent, chemical. I think he was looking for the word and said agent or something like that. But it was weird. I think this was planned. This is scary, y'all. I mean, because I can see what's happening here.
They needed a reporter to ask the question so the Pentagon spokesman could have
The answer.
an answer that would then be published in Moscow. And back and forth we go. So Jens Stoltenberg says, stop rattling the saber.
And then we come over
And then
rattle.
And then we rattle one on our end. And so tomorrow, Russia's going to rattle their swords tomorrow. And this is going to continue until somebody takes one of their weapons out and uses it. This is a dangerous path that we're on. You know, last night, I mean, I could barely listen to any news anymore. It's unbearable.
It's hard.
It is disgusting. The propaganda is so thick. But the number of Republican Party and Democratic Party officials in Washington both saying the same things. Clearly, they have their talking points from the deep state. We need a no-fly zone. We've got to get more weapons to Ukraine.
We got to be ready to use nukes.
Got to be ready for, yes, this is what's going on. This is what politicians are saying, these things, and the public isn't reprimanding them. The public is, even the ones that are paying attention to it are not even having a reaction to it.
Do you think they've just kind of given up a little bit? That they know their voices aren't being heard anyway, so why say anything at all?
So are we at a place now, Doc, that all of us are just saying, here it comes, there's going to be a nuclear war, It's a done deal. It's going to happen. Or is that where we're at right now?
It sure feels like it, doesn't it? I mean, just the way you see people react to the stories. I mean, what a difference between now and 60 years ago when we're looking at a possible conflict with Russia over Cuba. People were digging holes in the ground to hide from nuclear bombs.
Yes.
And so now it's like, well, I got something to do, or I got to check up my location on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
they're paying attention to social media and not really, discussing reality. And I see it among Christians. I see it among conservatives, among patriots. The people on the right who should know better are just as clueless as those on the left.
yes.
They're all just like oblivious to what's happening around them.
They're either oblivious to it or they're in favor of
Are
it.
in favor. Many of them are in favor of it. That's
They're
what's good.
itching for a nuclear war.
Yes.
So,
Okay, so I want to. We'll change topics here from nuclear war, but show you some of the other things that are happening in response to the conflict in Ukraine. I want to reiterate the old New World Order that came into existence at the end of World War II. The old New World Order is now dead. It is a dead New World Order.
what they were calling the liberal world.
I think the old New World Order died when George Herbert Walker Bush died. Is what I believe. That was the end of the old guard.
Order.
Yes.
So,
The liberal New World Order has died. Globalization has died. We're in a fragmented world system right now. Most likely it's going to become more fragmented, more regionalized, more isolated. It may be difficult to even travel to certain countries in the future. It's like an invisible Iron Curtain is going up.
right.
And this time it's not Russia putting up the Iron Curtain, it's the West putting up the Iron Curtain.
Yes. It's a digital curtain.
Yes. And whole nations like Russia are being deplatformed, canceled. This is a completely new world. The COVID pandemic was the first stage of breaking.
If he get too frosty on here, I'm gonna have to fast forward. Y'all know how they do here on this platform on the tube. So if they get too frosty with it, I'm gonna have to fast forward through that part because what happened to my last channel. So
Down
Resistance.
the existing world. This is now phase 2. And I think a lot of people have not connected the two. This war in Ukraine with the COVID propaganda. The same people are running it. Now, I'm not talking about Russia and Putin. They have responded to the bait. They took the bait. It got to the place where they couldn't ignore it anymore. But what is happening right now is that the deep state who gave us COVID, gave us the lockdowns, the mask mandates, the vaccine mandates, they're now giving you the war mandate, the hatred mandate, the bloodlust mandate. And people are falling for it, they're buying into it, and you can't convince them. The same people who were furious.
Yep, I know where he going with this. The same people who told you to get the stickies. Same people who told you to get the stickies is the same people that's telling you to go to war. The same people.
Furious and angry about mask mandates and vaccine mandates are now wanting to see Russia destroyed.
Yes.
Within a matter of 3 weeks, the deep state got totally inside their head and flipped them, and they didn't even notice it. But I want to show you how this is affecting things. This next story is from Novosti News Service. Russia will transfer payments for gas supplies to Europe in rubles.
Why is that
I
important?
saw
Ray?
this today.
Well,
I was gonna I was gonna do a report on it, but I had to run out and do something. I can't. But so I end up not reporting on it. But this is huge. I mean, because the dollar, the U.S. dollar is the world currency, and it's backed by our military basically. And with the deal we have with Saudi Arabia, the petrodollar thing, and everyone trades in dollars. So now Russia wants they want Europe, instead of them giving them dollars, they want it in rubles, which is huge.
The U.S. sanctioned Russia and said nobody can do business with Russia. The United States closed down or seized their cash reserves, their various reserves of gold and cash that Russia had stored outside of the territory of Russia. So Putin responded today by saying, if you want to buy our natural gas or our oil, we're not going to take dollars.
Right.
Hey, we can't use dollars. The Western banks are closed to us.
Right.
The Russian banks are open, and we use rubles. You want Russian gas? You pay in Russian rubles.
And he said exactly that. He said Russia will convert payments for gas supplies to unfriendly countries into rubles. Vladimir Putin said, it makes no sense for us to deliver our goods to the European Union, the United States, and receive payment in dollars, euros, and a number of other currencies. Therefore, I decided to implement a set of measures to transfer payments as soon as possible. Let's start with this. From our natural gas to the transfer of payment for our natural gas supplied to the so-called unfriendly countries for Russian rubles. That is, to refuse to use all compromised currencies in such calculations, he said.
So there's a major blow to the U.S. dollar as the global reserve currency. Biden's strategy has backfired, unless Biden's working for China, because China is the only country that's coming out of this mess.
Which is a big possibility. We know China owns Biden. We know they have all the dirt on Biden, and we know that they probably had all of Hunter Biden's laptops, not just the two that how do you lose two laptops and not know it? You know what I'm saying? How are you the vice president's son and you lose two laptops?
Looking good from their vantage point.
Right.
A war between Russia and the United States and NATO only makes China stronger.
You're exactly right.
Okay, so just keep that in mind. Mr. Biden may be carrying out Xi Jinping's instructions, and Xi is sitting over in Beijing watching Putin search for help, and nobody helps him, and Biden just continues to turn the screws, and China comes out on top as the United States and Russia fight it out among themselves. So what you have today is, if you want to buy Russian gas and oil, pay with Russian rubles, no U.S. dollars, no EU euros. It's
Copper Sky said, sadly, I agree with their assessment of the dollar. If things go the way of the Canadian truckers and Russia, the Fed and Biden could push to disenfranchise Texans and Floridas for having the wrong politics. Gold, silver, these are the only things you can count on anymore. I agree. And I'm not talking about just just owning ETFs or stock in gold and silver. I'm talking about having some hard gold and silver for trade. You can't go wrong with it.
rubles.
And even if they were paid in dollars and
They can't put them in the bank.
Right, because they've all been sanctioned.
Right. So it's of no use to them. But Doc, I remember another political leader who did something like this. Muammar Gaddafi. He said, if you want...
He brought back the dinar, and he was trying to uplift Africa, Northern Africa, you know, and then what happened to Muammar Gaddafi? Muammar Gaddafi? They killed him, had him, dragged him out in the street and poked him in the you know what. It was disgusting. I mean, I saw the video. It was horrible what they did to that man. I'm not saying he's like the greatest person and all, but gosh, he was trying to uplift Africa. He tried to bring back the dinar. I mean, in Libya, people could actually go to college for free. Women had freedom over there. You know what I'm saying? And he was actually starting to lift up Africa, and that's why they took him out. That's why they took him out.
Libyan oil, pay with gold. We're not going to take any more Federal Reserve notes. We give you real oil, you give us real gold. Well, they killed Gaddafi.
Right.
NATO bombed Libya.
Remember what Hillary Clinton said? He came, he saw, he died, or something like that. And she laughed, she cackled like an evil witch.
NATO. What was NATO's business in Libya?
It's not on the Atlantic.
No.
So
And then slavery ended up back in Libya. We had the first black president of Barack Obama, who went into Libya, destroyed Libya, and brought back slavery to that country. Our first black president.
NATO bombed Libya and they killed Gaddafi because Gaddafi said two things. I want gold for oil, and number two, I'm going to mint a gold-backed dinar.
Dinar. He brought back the dinar.
We're going to have a coin that's made of gold.
real gold.
Yes. And the international banksters, of which Jens Stoltenberg is one of them, he's going to work soon as the governor of the Bank of Norway. The international banksters said, well, Colonel Gaddafi, it looks like you've come to the end of the road.
Well, Stoltenberg probably was, I think he's from the IMF. That's why his name sounded familiar. The IMF, I believe.
We're going to have to slaughter you. We're going to bomb your country with our NATO military force, and then we're going to gut you like a deer. And that's what they did to him.
And after all the things that he was accused of for decades, that was the thing that finally crossed the line for him.
Yes. They can handle anything else, but he messed with their money. When he messed with their money, they came after him. So now Putin today has messed with their money. He's saying, I don't want your dollars anymore. They're no use to me. So look, the dollar is over now. The dollar is over as a global reserve currency. It's not going to go away tomorrow. But its position in the world has ceased to exist.
There was a time when the French franc was the currency of the world. There was a time when the British pound ruled the world.
That's right.
And there was always going to be a time when the dollar ceased to rule the world, too. And so,
going back to Lavrov, Doc, he made a comment today in that speech that that Russian leaders were surprised by the scale of the Western sanctions.
Rice said Moscow was taken aback by the scale of the sanctions over the war in Ukraine, Russia's foreign minister said. First time officials have admitted being unprepared for the Western response. When they froze the central bank reserves, nobody was predicting what sanctions the West would pass, could have pictured that. It's just thievery, Sergei Lavrov told students at MGIMO, Russia's main foreign relations university. Do you really think they were caught that much off guard, Rick, by the depth of sanctions?
I was surprised by this comment. He said when they froze the central.
I think so. I don't think they believed that they would do that. I really don't. I mean, I was shocked that they froze those accounts, those Russian accounts.
Bank reserves. Nobody who was predicting what sanctions the West would pass could have pictured this. So apparently they were surprised. But it's my view that the United States and the West had all of the actions planned long in advance. I'm talking about the dominoes that fell quickly in a matter of weeks.
Right.
The sanctions, the seizing of assets, even down to the point of taking Putin's black belt away from him. I think they had it all planned, and that's what caught the Russian officials off guard. They deplatformed Russia in 2 weeks.
Do you think it's also caught the West off guard that Russia hasn't capitulated to those sanctions yet? Do you think the West is just as surprised?
Oh yeah, they're putting more sanctions.
Right.
I think 300.
What else are they going to sanction? Air?
Well, 300 members of the Russian Duma were sanctioned today. So they're Congress. They're now putting sanctions on them.
Or they're going to steal their boats too and everything?
Yeah. So if they have bank accounts in other countries, they're going to go after it.
And sanction their families and everything else too. Okay.
Right. So there's no end to this.
So when are they going to sanction the entire Russian population? Because what else is left?
I just realized I don't have my lights on, so I apologize for my. I just realized my screen is flickering and stuff, so I apologize for that.
I mean, there's not much left beyond this, is there?
No, but you showed me an article the other day
This is a great
from
story.
Sovereign Man. It's like, okay, this is not satire, this is real.
Yeah.
United States to bring back pirates to seize Russian yachts.
If any of you have never been on the Sovereign Man side, I encourage you to do so. It's always got some great stories. This is not an imaginary story at all. What's going on is there's actually a bill in Congress for the issuance of letters of marque and reprisal for the purpose of seizing assets of certain Russian citizens. Now, what is a letter of marque and reprisal? Well, basically, it's a permission slip given by the U.S. government to a private individual or corporation to go out and steal something. It's kind of like.
That's what the pirates used to do. That they used to go in and get a mark from from their rulers, and they would go and they would just seize these ships and take their stuff, and basically asset forfeiture for a private citizen. It's crazy. Like a private citizen go and take whatever.
Like a bounty hunter, except there is no bounty. You just go and grab the...
Your bounty is whatever you get.
Whatever you get. It was the beginning of piracy in the late 1700s, and so...
Copper Sky said, "Dog the bounty hunter, but the pirate version." Exactly. Exactly what it is.
And so in essence, the U.S. government is now bringing back piracy. Make piracy great again is what they're saying. And they are actually in the process of considering and approving issuing letters of marque and reprisal for just certain Russian citizens at this point. Obviously, those oligarchs. You know, Rick, I think there might be some American oligarchs that could be taking advantage of this too. And so, the bill itself says the President of the United States is authorized and requested to commission under officially issued letters of marque and reprisal so many of privately armed and equipped persons and entities, also known as privateers, which were pirates, in the judgment of the President, the service may require with suitable instructions to the leaders thereof to employ all means reasonably necessary to seize outside the geographic boundaries of the United States and its territories any yacht, plane, or other asset of any Russian citizen who is on the list of specially designated nationals and blocked persons maintained by the Office of Foreign Assets Control of the Department of the Treasury.
All right, leave this up. Let's go through this line by line. So if this becomes law, Joe Biden will be legally authorized to issue these letters to privately armed and equipped American citizens and corporations.
Yes.
We're talking about former U.S. commandos,
right,
and private military contractors.
Yes.
Okay. That's they're giving them legal permission to carry weapons and equipment
Yes.
that may require, with suitable instructions, the instructions coming from whom? All right?
From the President of the United States.
To employ all means reasonably necessary to seize outside the boundaries of the United States of America foreign land,
Yes.
international seas.
Yes.
It's
and it's not
crazy.
limited to even real things, Rick. The article that...
Or other assets.
right. It can include digital assets,
Yes.
bank accounts.
Bitcoin.
So if you're a hacker, you could, with the right letter of marque or reprisal,
Yes.
hack into the bank accounts of the 300 members of the Russian Duma and
Yes.
suck their accounts dry.
Yes.
All in the name of defending
And
democracy.
you would be protected by the United States government from any prosecution.
And the way pirates earned their living in the past is that they handed over the assets to the federal government, and the pirate received a portion of that back. If they happened to hand it over to the government, that
Right.
is, because sometimes it got lost in transit.
Sure.
So, buried on an island somewhere or something like that. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Boy, it's unbelievable that this is a bill in Congress to legalize thievery against people who haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah, all you have to do is end up on the list.
But
They said
you end
any
up on the
Russian
list.
citizen.
End up on the list because you're Russian.
Yes.
So, if you're Russian, the U.S. government says you're fair game. We're coming after you. Doesn't matter if you've broken any laws. Doesn't matter. We're just going to come after you. We're going to punish you.
It's crazy.
What if somebody did that to Jewish people?
Oh, there would be a tremendous outcry. I mean, there'd be
Rightfully so.
dust
What if we
flying
just
up in the air.
targeted Jewish people? Just said, seize the assets of any Jewish citizen.
It would be an outcry,
Well,
rightfully
just on a
so.
special list, though, Rick.
But it would be wrong, Doc.
Sure.
It would be
Yeah, it's wrong. No matter
to
who it is.
target Jewish people and say just because they're Jewish, you can seize their assets.
Or how about black?
Absolutely. Or Muslims, Arabs.
Yeah, it would be wrong.
I mean, are we just going to go seize the assets of Arabs? This is outrageous.
It's
But
okay
this is
because
the
it's
kind
Russians.
of war mania that's in the United States right now. You got politicians who are trying to outdo other politicians. I want to come up with something more crazy, more outrageous than the other politician.
Hey, we haven't had pirates in a while. Let's do that. We haven't had pirates since 1812. Let's bring that back.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, move on to another story. Yesterday, Financial Times in London reported that traders are warning of a looming global diesel shortage.
Wow.
Some interesting insights in.
Our trucks run on diesel. Our trucks run on diesel. The trucks, they're bringing our goods. So this is not a good thing at all.
This Financial Times article, we'll take a look at some of the quotes.
Right. Global markets face a squeeze on diesel. The world's top trading groups have warned, with Europe most at risk of a systemic shortage that could lead to fuel rationing. The heads of three of the largest commodity traders, Vitol, Gunvar, and Trafigura, estimated as much as 3 million barrels of oil and its products a day could be lost from Russia as a result of sanctions following the country's invasion of Ukraine. Corporate leaders were speaking at the FT Commodities Global Summit in Lausanne, Switzerland on Tuesday. The thing that everyone's concerned about will be diesel supplies. Europe imports about half its diesel from Russia and about half its diesel from the Middle East, said Russell Hardy, chief of Switzerland-based oil trader Vitol. That systemic shortfall of diesel is there, and those Russian imports account for roughly 15% of Europe's diesel consumption, while crude oil, including supplies from Russia, is also processed by refineries on the continent. Now, they go on to say, this is Torbjörn Tornquist, co-founder and chair of the Geneva-headquartered Gunvar Group, added diesel is not just a European problem, this is a global problem. Amrita Sen, chief oil analyst at Energy Aspects, said that diesel is by far the worst affected of the oil products because Europe imports close to 1 million barrels a day of Russian diesel, and the world entered the conflict with nearly record low stocks of oil. Meanwhile, Jeremy Weir, chief executive of Singapore-based Trafigura, said that 2 to 2.5 million barrels of Russian oil production would go missing from the global market, split between crude and refined products. The diesel market is extremely tight, and it's going to get tighter. Turnquist also said European gas markets were no longer functioning.
Copper Sky said, just gets worse and worse. I'll have to check this site out. I haven't heard any major news sites call out the piracy bill yet or diesel shortages. Yeah, I haven't heard about the diesel shortages at all. I did read the piracy bill. I think I read it yesterday. I thought it was very, very interesting. I've definitely read that. But yeah, the diesel shortages is news to me also. I'm gonna have to check it out too.
Functioning properly, as traders faced huge demands from banks for cash to cover hedging positions. I think it's broken. It really is. He said, I never thought that somebody could say, gas has fallen below 100 per megawatt hours, and that's really cheap. Last week, Europe's largest energy traders called on governments and central banks to provide emergency liquidity support to keep gas and power markets functioning, as sharp price moves triggered by the Ukraine crisis has strained dealings in commodities. Even here in the U.S., Rick, we're seeing reflections of that. If you drive by your local gas station, you'll see gas at, let's say, $4 a gallon, but diesel's at $5.
Yes.
And they used to track pretty evenly, but here over the past couple of weeks, when we saw our big spike on just, standard gasoline, diesel really shot up. And whereas, regular unleaded has come back down in price a little bit, that diesel price has been stuck up at that amount, and that's some of the reasons that we're seeing for that here.
Well,
it could get a lot worse.
Yeah, we're showing this to you because if you drive a diesel vehicle, you need to be prepared for very sharp increases in the price of diesel fuel and the real possibility of no diesel fuel at all. Again, the system is broken. Joe Biden, the ruling class of America, the warmongers, the NATO with Europe, they have broken the system. I don't know if it's going exactly the way they planned and hoped for. I just know that here on our end, for you and me, we're going to feel the brunt of this. Even if it doesn't go to nuclear war, everything else is going to break up. There are going to be major shortages, rampant inflation, unlike anything we have seen probably, we're headed towards post-World War I German inflation.
Or wheelbarrows and
yes,
marks.
That's where we're headed right now. And it has nothing to do with this war. That has to do with the unlimited
policies.
Printing of U.S. dollars and euros after the 2008 crisis. So now they have...
they're spending us into oblivion. And then they spending and spending and spending. And then when you confront them on it, and they tell you that spending is good. They tell you can spend your way out of debt. Like, it's unreal. It's unreal.
Breakdown in the system, so they need a war to cover up the inflation. And that's what Joe Biden is doing. Hey, prices up because of Putin. No, they were up before the war. The war is covering up the mess that the world is in because of the banksters.
Because think about this, if we weren't talking about Russia and Ukraine right now, what would we be talking about?
Definitely inflation and Hunter Biden.
Yes.
Hunter Biden has dropped off the radar screen, didn't it?
It peaked there for a moment. Now it's back off the screen again.
Yeah.
So
even with the New York Times discovering the story.
Not with me. I'm reporting it. I'm going to stay on it. I've been on the Hunter Biden thing since its inception, and I'm going to stay on it. I will not let it go.
Yes.
A couple more before we take a break. I'm not going to go into deep details. South China Morning Post. Ukraine war is a test and a great opportunity for China to raise its profile. It's what I was saying earlier. China is going to come out ahead with this conflict between the United States and Russia. If they play it correctly they're the winner because the U.S. and Russia will weaken each other. But not everything is rosy with China. Oilprice.com said Russia's invasion is crushing China's Belt and Road ambitions. And we're not going to go into this, but the article is very interesting. You can read it yourself at oilprice.com. And it talks about the disruption that the war and the sanctions, particularly the sanctions put on Russia by the West has strongly, deeply impacted China's Belt and Road, because the Belt and Road Initiative is going through certain countries that are under,
right,
like Belarus.
Yeah, I was surprised in the article to read that China had invested this huge amount of money, like $2 billion, to create this rail hub in Belarus that now they're apparently just going to have to walk away from because of the sanctions that are in place. That there aren't sanctions on China, and China's not worried about the sanctions, but other nations aren't involved with Belarus now, and that inhibits China's ability to further expand eastward into Europe.
So globalization is broken. The whole system has been cracked. A new world order will emerge, and the fight is on for which new world order is coming. There's no guarantee. Well, I guess we could say Satan's new world order. There's a fourth beast coming. We don't know how soon that thing arrives. It appears that it's forming right now. We saw it the past 2 years with the vaccine mandates. It certainly looked like the enforcement mechanism for the mark of the beast. So, you know, Satan is, he's got his system that he wants to.
YouTube, let me clarify, and they said the mechanism. They didn't say it is the mark. They say it's the mechanism that they're using, YouTube. So don't get me on that.
Bring forth, but to say the new world order is going to be of the West, of it's China, Russia, the Vatican, we don't know yet. What we do know is the old new world order has officially died. That thing's done. The post-World War II New World Order is over. All right, this segment of True News is over. We'll take a break. We'll be back in a minute with some more news and some talk about Bible prophecy.
All right, I'm going to fast forward to the other side.
And was weeds to pull
Yes.
and flowers to plant. So Susan had me planting flowers last night again. And so anyhow, I got all that done, and it was, thank God for darkness, you know. you can
miss winter real
You can
quick
put the
here in
shovel
Florida.
away. Hey, honey, I'd plant more, but it's dark, you know. So, you know, I went into the house. By that time, it's, you know, it's after 8 p.m. And so I was eating a late dinner after 8 p.m., which is not good for your health, but that's what I was doing. And turned on the TV in the living room and was watching Tucker Carlson as I was eating dinner, okay?
Right.
Well, I noticed something. Tucker started making some snarky remarks about Hillary Clinton announcing that she had COVID. No, nobody's rejoicing that she has COVID. I don't think he was.
Of course
I hope not. But where he was going with it is that Hillary praised the COVID vaccines.
Right.
All right. It's so stupid.
Up. I gotta fast forward. I know where they're going with that. We can all guess where they're going with that. So, yeah. If you can't figure it out, then I don't know what to tell
Right,
you.
but in their archives, they've
Okay,
done
let me
something
see.
else.
I haven't seen this video we're about to see.
So this is Tucker Carlson last night talking about Hillary Clinton and COVID.
Yes, we read Hillary Clinton's Twitter feed, and she had some big news today in case you missed it. Quote, well, I've tested.
Oop. I don't want. We can read what she says there. She's happy that she got it, and she's boosted, and even though she got the thing, she got the sick. She's glad she got the jab. So it is what it is. I don't know how you get all them things and still get the thing. So, and then be happy about getting it. So this is crazy. Bizarro world.
Than ever for the protection vaccine.
Hey, they censored Tucker last night.
They can go and watch this today.
No, they didn't. There it is.
Was.
Right there it is. No, I saw it.
It's talking.
Yes.
So.
That's right. So they did censor Tucker for saying that. For stating the obvious.
Maybe 1% of the total viewing of that particular segment occurred online today.
So that's that's what's online?
Yes.
That's not what went out on cable and streaming and satellite last night. They cut him off in mid-sentence the moment he began to mock the vaccines. So they fixed it, didn't they?
They did.
So
they cut him
if
off?
anybody said, hey, they censored Tucker last night,
they can go and watch this today.
No, they didn't. There it is.
Was.
Right there it is. No, I saw it, and my wife saw it too. They censored it.
Yeah, it was frustrating today because we were looking for it and we couldn't find what you had seen, and so let's run with what they're showing, and then see if Rick saw something else. And sure enough, you did. But that shouldn't be surprising.
Of course not.
Especially since we talked about propaganda last week. And if you understand that Fox News is a propaganda outlet, it makes life just a whole lot simpler for you. So.
Doc, Joe Biden has his first nominee for the United States Supreme Court, Ketanji Brown Jackson.
It's sickening. I've did so many stories on her, how she's a pedo sympathizer. It's crazy to me that Dems are defending this woman and saying that, oh, she's great and people are hating on her because she's black. And no, do you not understand what this woman wrote about pedos, about sentencing? First, she did it when she was at Harvard. She wrote an article where she was like, "Hey, we need to lighten these sentences." Like, you're in law school, and that's the horse you want to back. You want to back lighter sentences for those pedos. That's the horse you want to ride in on. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they're defending this woman. And so when she became a judge, she lightened the sentences for these people. Like, why is she on a crusade to help these people that hurt children? Why? I have no clue. And the Dems are like really backing her, and like you got Booker out here giving these speeches, and it's sickening. It's sickening to me that they're putting their own political aspirations or whatever you want, whatever it is, their own political party before children. It's sickening to me. It's sickening.
The purpose of her nomination, according to Joe Biden, not me, according to Joe Biden, he said before he nominated her, he would nominate a black woman.
Right.
All right? Didn't he say a black woman?
Yes.
Judge Jackson
I know where he's going with this.
What is a woman?
It's been big news. It's been big news everywhere. She looked like a damn fool. They asked her to define woman, and she said, I'm not a biologist. What? You can't define what a woman is? Something that you learn in elementary school, what a woman and a female is, you can't define that?
How do we know she is a black woman?
Yeah, how do we know?
She doesn't know.
Right.
Doc, she doesn't know.
Folks,
think about it.
If you think we're making this up, this is Fox News here.
She doesn't know she's a woman.
Brown Jackson, Biden's Supreme Court pick, refuses to define the word woman.
How about just saying, well, I'm not going to say it, but I mean, if you don't know if you're a man or a woman, or how to define what is a man or woman, you don't belong on the Supreme Court.
And she has 2 daughters, or I don't know if she has 2 daughters or not, because
2 biological beings.
right, who were formerly identified as women.
Does she call them daughters?
I don't know. Is it okay to call them daughters? I don't know anymore. We actually have the clip where Senator Marsha Blackburn, you can see the look on Senator Blackburn's face as she just is floored by the response that
she was like, I'm not a
nominee for the
biologist.
Supreme Court of the United States can't define what a woman is. Watch this.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No,
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the
biologist.
meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the
All right.
law and I decide. So I'm not.
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about. Just last week, an entire generation of young girls watched as our taxpayer-funded institutions permitted a biological man to compete and beat a biological woman in the NCAA swimming championships. What message do you think this sends to girls who aspire to compete and win in sports at the highest levels?
Senator, I'm not sure what message that sends. If you're asking me about the legal issues related to it, those are topics that are being hotly discussed, as you say, and
Right.
could come to the court. So I'm not
And
able to.
I think it tells our girls that their voices don't matter. I think it tells them that they're second-class citizens, and parents want to have a Supreme Court justice who is committed to preserving.
So Biden couldn't find no other black judge in whole of America than someone that is a pedo sympathizer, for CRT activist, can't define a woman. This is who he finds. And no, this is why we call him Creepy Joe. So of course he would pick a sympathizer, because that's why we call him Creepy Joe. He goes around smelling kids' hair and whispering in little kids' ears and stuff. Evil stuff.
Parental autonomy and protecting our nation's children.
Boy, Perry Mason sure had it a lot easier, didn't he?
He did. So, Doc, in the 60s, the left introduced feminism. And it was a radical doctrine that supposedly.
But that feminism is nothing compared to the new wave feminism, the third wave, second wave, third wave feminism that we're in now. It's crazy, like what they're doing. It is like they they have such a disdain for the older feminists, believe it or not.
Was to elevate the role of women. But it was a political agenda.
Sure.
The left is done with feminism.
Wow, are they done with feminism? Where are the feminists about this issue?
They're done with women.
Right.
It's only one feminist that's speaking out against this, and that's the Harry Potter author. What's her name? Rollins. I can't remember her name, but the Harry Potter author is the only one that's feminist that's speaking out against this. And I'm gonna tell you, before all this happened, I still don't. I'm not a fan of hers. I like Harry Potter and stuff, but I'm not really a fan of her, politics or whatnot. But as far as her going speaking truth about the whole transgender stuff, I do respect that. And she's getting blasted for it from her own people. It's the end of feminism. Transgenderism is ushered in, and it's the end of feminism now.
They will not say the
You
word.
can't be a feminist.
They will not say the word woman now. In fact, it takes a man to be a woman.
That's it. And like I
True.
said, where are the feminists on this issue? That even, you know, they were looking for equal rights for women, you know, in the workplace. That was their mantra anyway.
Right.
Well, now they're getting beat out again
By men.
By men. So it doesn't make any sense to me.
Because the left's agenda is to break down Christian society.
They eat their own. I've always been saying this. The left always eat their own, and it's coming back around now. The snake is coming around and eating its tail. So now it's going after feminists. At first it went after, you know, black people, saying that, hey, you're a person of color now. Now we're gonna call you colored again. And not only are we gonna call you color again, you're gonna call yourself color now, person of color. And no, it's not that we see color is no longer color blindness like Martin Luther King spoke about. Now you are defined by your color. And they use that against you, and CRT is to make you feel like you can't never come out of it, and you're enslaved, and this is what they teaching, and now they're getting rid of feminism, and like they just use these isms against you.
Yes.
That's the agenda. Feminism was the first attack, then now transgenderism is the second attack in sexuality. It's to break down Christian morality, Christian society. Yeah. But so now we have why should I say she's a black woman?
Right, you can't say that anymore.
Because she doesn't know if she's a woman. She can't define woman, so how does she know she's a woman?
And would it be offensive to say, I'm nominating a black woman?
Well, that's the point I'm making, is Joe Biden said he was going to deliberately nominate a black woman. I think he nominated a black biological being. But she doesn't know if she's a woman.
And the irony is, he could have nominated a black man, and the man could have wore a dress.
He said he was a woman. It could have been Rachel Levine.
Right. That's how crazy it is out there, folks. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's
bizarro.
America has gone insane.
Bizarro world.
On the topic of the end of the world, let's take a look at a story out of Japan. Ocean trench mega quake now seen as a very real threat. This is a Japanese newspaper in Tokyo.
So the things that are happening right now is they're preparing for a mega quake. We're talking about 9+, and they're on target here within, they believe, sometime in the very near future for something like that to happen. The government was urged to amend a special law and act in 2004 to prepare the public for a mega quake in either the Japan Trench, that is part of the Pacific.
Gamer Jam said, I think this is what a lot of rich people don't realize. The main reason it's so easy for any rich person to go to work is because they're already accommodated for. Okay. I get it.
Rim of fire off northeast Japan, or the Tsushima Trench that lies off Tokachi in Hokkaido and stretches to the Kuril Islands. A working group within the Central Disaster Prevention Council on March 22nd released a report on disaster preparedness measures that should be taken in an eventuality. Now, it said in December 2021, the Cabinet Office released estimates of fatalities from a megaquake in the Japan Trench or the Tsushima Trench. Both trenches make up part of the seabed of the Pacific Ocean. The Cabinet Office projected up to 199,000 fatalities in the event of a magnitude 9.1 megaquake in the Japan Trench late at night in winter, and said that around 22,000 people could be injured. It's estimated that 220,000 buildings could collapse, causing $260 billion in economic damage. It also projected up to 100,000 deaths if that same earthquake, but of 9.3 magnitude, hits the Tsushima Trench. The council noted that towering tsunami pummeled Pacific coastal areas from Hokkaido to Iwate Prefecture every 300 to 400 years. And Rick, the last time a related tsunami of devastating power of that magnitude hit was in the 1600s, suggesting the possibility of another one happening very soon.
So we have an earthquake tsunami cycle.
And we're in that cycle right now. And there have been a number of earthquakes along the Pacific Rim just within the past 2 weeks.
That's right.
So things are heating up once again.
Hey, I'm going to jump down to, because of the hour that I want to finish up soon. I'm going to jump down to number 38. This is Charisma News. Experts say prophetic alarm bells are ringing for Gog and Magog clash. So as we're hearing a lot of talk about nuclear war, the Christian Zionists are also they're becoming giddy with excitement that there's going to be this great.
Copper Sky said Japan is way overdue for a major quake, like 30 years overdue, much less one under the sea. Will be bad when it happens. Yeah, it will be bad. And I always wanted to go to Japan. Japan is on my list to go because I love the technology over there, how they embrace technology, and the robot hotels and all that stuff. I want to stay in a robot hotel so bad. So that's definitely on my travel list.
War, and they are convinced that it is Ezekiel 38, 39, Gog and Magog, which they attribute to Russia. And so these types of articles are appearing in a lot of prophecy news websites and Christian sites and newsletters in the past 2 weeks, and they're excited about it. I mean, they're actually looking forward to this. So, Doc, we can't go through the entire chapters 38 and 39 in the minutes that we have, but we'll show 38, Ezekiel 38, verse 2.
Right. So if we put number 40 up on the screen, this is the verse as it reads in the King James at the top. Ezekiel 38:2. It says, "Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and prophesy against him." And one of the linchpins of dispensationalism and rapturism today is the idea that there's going to be some sort of future war between Russia and Israel. And they identify Russia based on this primary verse here, Ezekiel 38:2. And the key is in that word that's translated chief prince. That chief prince word is the word Rosh, R-O-S-H in Hebrew. And they make the transliteration that Rosh is Russia, because it also means red, and therefore red is for Russia and things like that. Now the King James translated that word chief priest of Meshach and Tubal, whereas some of the other modern translations, they say Prince of Rosh, or like the American Standard Version, the Prince of Rosh. They get this because of the imprint of dispensationalism that was brought on by Schofield, Mr. Schofield, from his Schofield notes. Now in number 41 for our guys in control here, these are the notes that are on the verse Ezekiel 38:2 from Schofield's Reference Bible. Now he says this, that the primary reference that is meaning there is the European powers headed up by Russia all agree Gog is the prince, Magog is land. The reference to Meshach and Tubal, and he actually says Moscow and Tobolsk, is a clear mark of identification. Russia and the northern powers have been the latest persecutors of dispersed Israel and is congruent both with divine justice and with the covenants that destruction should fall at the climax of the last mad attempt to exterminate the remnant of Israel and Jerusalem. The whole prophecy brings yet a future day of Jehovah. Now, the reason why I bring this up in this reference here, the Schofield Reference Bible, is the words Meshach and Tubal are not Moscow and Tobolsk.
No, I don't agree. I don't believe that, Doc. I mean, I believe I'm in agreement with you. By the way, I brought out to the studio. This is an authentic 1909 first edition Schofield Reference Bible. And I was able to obtain one of these. And the quote that Doc just read, it's right here in the chapter 38 of Ezekiel. And there are the Schofield footnotes right there, the exact words that he said, that the primary reference is to the Northern European powers headed up by Russia, all agree.
Right.
And this is what Schofield wrote. So this is part of Dipsyism, dispensational, premillennial, pre-tribulation Zionism. The same people that peddle the rapture and all these other doctrines, the third temple and all that kind of stuff. 7 years of tribulation, the abomination of desolation in the temple, you know, in the last days, all that kind of stuff. This is all the same people. Came from Schofield and Darby, all right? And so when you hear this stuff being preached right now on television and radio, maybe even your local church, and you're getting it in prophecy newsletters, be aware where it's coming from. It's coming from Schofield.
Right.
And Darby. So if you hear someone say, wow, we're witnessing Ezekiel 38 and 39, this is happening in front of us and Russia is going to invade Israel, that is a flawed prophecy interpretation.
It's and a disingenuous footnote too, because you can actually go to the region of Meshach, you can go to the region of Tubal. They are not Moscow and they are not Tobolsk. No. They're not either one of those places. As a matter of fact, that region is what we would today call the modern nation of Georgia, and you know, from there. And I can just imagine that from about the 30s to the 70s there, when Georgia was part of the Soviet Union, and they said, look, it's in Russia. It's in Russia. That area is in Russia. Well, it's because the Soviets had taken over that, yes. Right? Well, they're not part of Russia now. In fact, Georgia's trying to get into NATO, okay? So would you say that NATO is going to attack Israel? Oh, no, we can't have that. Scratch that out, Doc. You can't have that at all. But that's the case you would have to make at this point.
Yeah, it's the danger you have anytime you try to take ancient words, names, places out of the Bible and make them fit with modern.
Yeah, you have to do your own exegesis, meaning you have to go and do your own and research what the thing they're saying in the Bible actually meant back then at that time. You can't really go and take it what they meant back then at that time and apply it to today, because then you be confused and you make up fake prophecies like this.
Day, places, and people. It's like trying to name the Antichrist and all this.
Right. It's based on the headlines of the day. And this has been going on for 2,000 years, Rick. Right. I put up number 39 on the screen here. So this is kind of a little still chart I found in a book today. And it shows various Gog and Magog candidates down through the years. So if you start in the 4th century, there's Goths. In the 5th century, the Goths and the Moors. In the 7th, the Huns. Islam, the Hungarians, the Turks, the Tartars, the Lollards, or the persecutors of the Lollards, the dispersed tribes of Israel. Israel at one point was that. Back to the Turks again, and back to Islam again, and then throw the Pope in. At one point, the Native Americans, Rick, were counted as Gog and Magog candidates, okay? And up into the 20th century here, we got it right. I'm sure in the 20th century they got it right because all the others were wrong. A political leader and Russia, of course. Yeah. So depending on the headlines, people read something into the prophecy that's there. I'm of the opinion that Ezekiel 38 and 39 were fulfilled long ago. That rocks some people's world and minds a little bit too. So when I see stories like out of Charisma today, and they're also a little disingenuous too. They say, well, we need to prepare for the Gog and Magog war. Well, true dispensationalists don't believe that we fight the Gog and Magog war until after the millennium, after 1,000 years. Because it says in Revelation 20, verses 7 and 8, this is the verse they would use, And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the world, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number whom is as the sand of the sea.
And Doc, in that one, I believe the reference to Gog and Magog, it's a metaphor for the enemies of God's people.
Right, and because it's used...
Which would be the church.
Yes.
Gog and Magog would represent the forces on the earth in opposition to Christ's church.
And in this very verse, if the dispensationalists would care to really read it, it defines where Gog and Magog is located. Where are they located, Rick? They're located in the four quarters of the earth.
Oh, yes.
They're all over the earth. They're not up northeast of Israel. They're everywhere. They're scattered throughout the whole world.
So he shall go out to deceive the nations, which the nations are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog.
Yes.
The nations are Gog and Magog.
That's right.
The nations that
key.
oppose God, oppose the church of Christ.
Now, so if we play the dispensationalist game and say that the battle of Gog and Magog occurs at the end of the 1,000 years, why are we talking about it now?
Yeah.
It's at least 1,007 years away.
On their charts. What, do all dispensationalists believe it's
No,
at the end?
Some of them think it's the battle of combined with the battle of Armageddon. But this verse disproves that if you follow their chart. But some think the battle of Armageddon and the battle of Ezekiel 38-39 are actually combined.
Well, hey, put that Revelation scripture back up there. So I'm an amillennialist, which I believe that we are in the millennial kingdom. It's been in existence since the ascension of Christ, that the 1,000 years is a metaphor for an unlimited number of years in which Christ rules from heaven in his church on earth.
Right.
That's my interpretation of the millennial years. So based on that, Doc, when the 1,000 years are expired, which would be, according to an amillennialist, it would be just before the time of tribulation and the second coming.
Right.
Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. That's exactly what I believe. I believe he's already been loosed. That's why we're seeing so much evil. And he shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle. To battle whom? To battle Almighty God, not to fight the state of Israel.
Right.
The dispensationalists tell you that the nations are going to gather to fight the state of Israel, and Jesus Christ will come back to stop them. That's not what the Bible says.
No.
They gather to fight God.
Yes.
Gog and Magog in Revelation 20, which happens to be the same scriptures that mention the 1,000 years.
Right.
Okay. Gog and Magog are representing the nations of the world that fight God.
So, and another disqualifier for the dispensationalists is they would say that the 1,000 years are literal and Gog and Magog are literal. Okay? Mm-hmm. Whereas John himself said in the very first chapter of Revelation, these are pictures, these are images, these are to tell you, the truth about things that are happening.
Images of things that are real.
Right. So, if you let the Bible just kind of speak for itself, it solves a lot of riddles for you. As I mentioned before, I don't think Ezekiel 38 and 39 are yet to be fulfilled. They've already been fulfilled. We can talk about that some other time. But
the reference to Gog and Magog in Ezekiel.
Right. And so
that means the reference to Gog and Magog in Revelation is a separate.
It's a separate thing. It's a phrase that the audience that John was writing to in the first century understood completely.
Because
Gog and Magog, those guys are the enemies of God.
Yes, there you go. Now you got it.
So
they
understood that completely.
Yeah,
so
we're in agreement. That's the way I see it.
So, folks, just pray for discernment on these things because when you see headlines, is this the Gog and Magog war, or what are the 10 things you should do to get ready for the rapture, or things like that?
Hey,
folks, just be prepared. Be prepared. but be discerning about the things that you read.
Doc, you said a while ago, we don't have time to go into this in detail. I'll just toss this out and let you chew on it for a while. Maybe we'll talk about it another day. But you said that on a modern map, where those places would be modern Georgia.
Right.
In Europe. Okay? In ancient times, what other kingdom occupied that general area?
Well, it's funny you should mention that, Rick, because from about the 400s to about sometime in about the 1200s, there was a kingdom that extended from about where Georgia is, a little further south than that, into Turkey, all the way across the top of the Black Sea into Ukraine today. And that was the Khazarian kingdom, Khazars,
Right. So
where
the Khazars,
where the Ashkenazi came from.
So Gog and Magog could be, in ancient times, they could have represented the Khazars.
And there are people who studied the scriptures in the past that have made that suggestion that Gog and Magog, in fact, there are direct quotes in historical documents that called the people from Khazar who live in the land of Gog and Magog.
There's also historical records that refer to people in that general area, many centuries ago, as cannibals, that they were so evil. They drank blood. They ate babies. They did all kinds of wicked, evil things.
Oh, and I've got to read this to you because this is in Ezekiel 39, 17, and 18.
Okay.
Because it relates right to that. When you said that, I read that today. And thou, son of man, thus saith the Lord God, speak unto every feathered fowl, every beast of the field, assemble yourselves, come, gather yourselves on every side for my sacrifice. Ye shall eat the flesh of the mighty, and drink the blood of the princes of the earth. And when you said that about the flesh eaters in history from that region of the country, where Georgia and Ukraine are today.
They were flesh eaters. They were baby eaters. They were blood drinkers.
So,
And that's where the Nazis were so powerful.
Yep.
My. Hey.
we could talk all day on this, folks.
Society.
All right. Doc will not be here tomorrow, right?
Yes, taking a few days off.
3
for family.
days,
Yes.
Thursday, Friday, and Monday. I'll be here. And
I'm sure things won't collapse. while
things
I'm
won't
gone.
collapse. We'll be here. My son Jeremy will be here, I hope. He promised me he would be here. But we'll definitely be here Thursday, Friday, and next Monday. Pray for Doc and his wife to have a nice, safe trip together. And they're visiting some family. And Doc will be back here on Tuesday. I'll be back here tomorrow. God bless you. Thank you so much. Don't forget the book. There's a lot in this book about the last day, the very last day. You can order it at Trunews.com. $19.95 plus shipping. $100 donation for.
All right. I'm going to hit a couple headlines. Let's see. Get my screen going. And this book, Final Day, I keep saying I'm going to purchase it. I haven't purchased it yet, but I'm going to get that book. And I'll probably do a review of it once I get in and read it. Let's hit a couple headlines. Universities follow the politics, not the science, and that's the fact. Goldman, how China's stupid 19 lockdowns could disrupt global supply chains. Dr. Collins caught flat-footed by first questions on takedown email. Shanghai authorities urge calm amid surge in panic buying stoked by lockdown fears. So it's getting real out there in China. Navy veteran 66 lives an American horror story since his arrest on January 6th seditious conspiracy charge. Newsom want to give $400 debit cards to California car owners because Putin invaded Ukraine. Pentagon scrambles to restock weapons sent to Ukraine as arms market cash in. Eat lentils, 1/3 of U.S. workers make less than $15 an hour. Alright, let's see here. Gateway Pundit. Newsom proposes 400. We said that. Must-see video. Arizona Secretary of State Katie Hobb runs from TGP Jordan. Germany conducts mass raid over online insults against elected officials. Wow, we can't insult officials now? We can't insult officials. What is the world coming to? Eric Gritton's released video after dirtbag ex-FBI agent who smeared and framed him pleads guilty to evidence tampering. Tom Cotton blasts Kentaji Brown Jackson's pro bono work for Gitmo inmates. Just the news, fires rage near Chernobyl after Russia allegedly destroys radiation monitoring lab. I don't know why they would do that. You know how bad it is over there in Chernobyl. Why would you mess with this nuclear stuff? Republicans trusted more on education, poll shows. Taliban closed girls' school hours after reopening. Kentaji Brown says she will recuse herself from Harvard affirmative action case. Madeleine Albright, first female Secretary of State, dead at 84. U.S. formally declares Russia has committed war crimes in Ukraine. Let's see, The Hill. Biden asks Herschel Walker and Mohamed Oz to quit counsel or be ousted. Wow, what? I don't know what that's about. I'm gonna have to read that a little later. I'm not gonna go into it right now. European gas prices jump after Putin says unfriendly countries must pay in rubles. Former Manhattan prosecutor believed Trump was guilty of numerous felonies. Are they still trying? They are still trying. And they, you know they don't have nothing on this guy because they would have been had him. They just reaching. Jackson tears up as Booker addresses her historic nomination. Durbin cuts off Cruz as tempers flare. You have to follow the rules. Close Putin ally warns of nuclear dystopia. And that's what they went over with True News. The Daily Caller, calling all patriots. What is the most important thing the federal government can do to address high gas prices? Cut taxes. That's what you can do. And get rid of the gas tax also. GOP Rep Mullins says more female athletes need to speak out against transgender athletes. Fact check, does this video show the China Eastern Airlines plane crash? Photos reportedly show Border Patrol releasing migrants in Texas towns. Democrats look to sustainable investing craze as means for pushing climate agenda. They're going to keep trying to push that climate agenda. Trump was personally committed to expanding U.S. oil, gas drilling. Former Interior Secretary Zinke says, we knew that. I mean, that's what he was doing. But yeah, I think that's all I'm gonna go over tonight. It's been a long day. Let me know what you think about all this news, everything we covered about True News and some of these headlines that I covered. Let me know what you think about all this. Leave comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe. Copper Skies and Gamer Jam, thanks for y'all input today. Appreciate y'all. Until next time, I'm going to be doing more of these live streams. So check me out. Hit that alarm bell so you know when I do it. Till next time. Peace.